Yes, would you ask Mr. Bailey to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Bailey, you ready to carry on?
I am.
Good, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bailey, before we turn to the topic I was going to come to with you, can I just go back to the question of the origins of the discount on the Celotex RS5000? Can you please be shown CEL 3011457? Now, this is an email from from Mr. Room to you on Monday the 16th of March 2015. Hi Ben, as this would be a special order, do you need exactly 1900 square meters, or would you need more to be safe, mindful that we would have to produce in one complete run? Please let me know and I will speak to our factory about lead times. Please can you also let me know who you would be buying this through, and I will arrange a list price for the distributors involved so you can get the best competitive price. Now that's the day before we see the SIG quote giving you the 47.5% discount. It looks from this as if Mr. Room is telling you that he's arranging for you to have the best discount. Is that right?
I don't agree.
What did you understand Mr. Room to mean? That he would arrange a list price for the distributors involved so you can get the best competitive price? What did you understand by that?
I think my understanding is what I said earlier on, that they were demonstrating that they were not taking advantage of knowing they had the job, knowing they had the order, by giving a fair price.
I mean, on the face of the documents, it looks as if Mr. Room is telling you that he would sort out a discount through the distributors so that you would end up with the best price. And my question is, isn't that the source of the discount of 47.5% on this product?
He says competitive price. No, that's my understanding of it.
And in the end, just looking at that again, isn't it right, or is it right, that price had a part to play in the selection of RS5000 for this project, as opposed to, for example, K15?
I don't believe that was the case.
All right. Can we then turn to Kingspan K15? And I want to ask you some questions about that product. Could you look, please, at HAR 409643? Now, this is an email from you to Mark Stapley at Harley on the 9th of March 2015 with the subject Alternative Kingspan Insulation. What were you proposing this as an alternative to? Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Do you know why, or do you remember why you were sending this alternative insulation product to Mr. Stapley?
I don't recall.
Was this insulation being considered for Grenfell at the time?
I don't think so. I'm trying to remember what that Kingspan project is. If it's what I think it is, it wouldn't have been considered.
Right. Well, we can see that you attach a technical brochure called Optimar Rain Screen System, first issue, July 13. Why did you attach that and send it to Mark Stapley?
I don't know.
Can we look at it? It's at HAR 409644. And it's dated, as we can see from the top right-hand corner, July 2013. Had you read this brochure before you sent it to Mark Stapley?
I believe so. It looks familiar.
Can we look at page 7, please, under the heading Fire Performance? It says, Kingspan Optima rain screen can be used in multi-storey buildings up to 18 metres in height. For buildings over 18 metres in height, Kingspan Cooltherm K15 rain screen board can be used. Now, it would appear that the Optima product wasn't suitable for Grenfell Tower. Would you agree with that?
I don't think it was ever considered.
Right.
Grenfell Tower.
When you did look at this document, did you understand from what I've just shown you there that Kingspan were saying that K15, as opposed to the Optima product, was able to be used in buildings over 18 metres?
Well, that was an understanding I already had.
And as you confirmed, I think, earlier in your evidence, you had that understanding from your involvement on the Merit House project, is that right?
Yes.
Was it your understanding from that K15 could be used in buildings over 18 metres in any circumstances? In other words, with any rain screen?
Yes.
Now, we can see that 5 days before your email here, under which you send Mark Stapley this brochure, and that's the 9th of March, Mark Stapley had sought quotes for K15. Do you remember that? I'll show you a document, but do you remember that?
I don't remember at the time, but...
Okay. Well, let's look at HAR 3010030. Now, this is Mark Stapley to Jill Walker at SIG. Hi, Jill. Thank you for your quotation for the Celotex RS5000. However, please could you provide us with a comparison quote using 160mm, 280mm Kingspan K15 instead? Many thanks, Mark Stapley. Now, we know from the quote that Ms. Walker of SIG did provide this quotation in relation to Grenfell Tower. We don't need to go to it, but for our purposes and for the transcript, it's HAR 409718. We don't need to have that up. My question is, do you know from your own recollection why Mark Stapley was requesting alternative quotes for the insulation on Grenfell at this point, early March 2015?
I don't know why Mark was seeking a separate quotation.
Did he discuss that with you?
He may have done later, but at the time I don't remember.
Right. Do you know why Mark Stapley wanted a comparison price, as he says in the email we've got up here?
You'd have to ask Mark, I think.
Well, I'm asking you, because Mark Stapley was the operations director, you were the project manager by this time, and as the project manager, wouldn't you be involved in discussions about pricing, comparative pricing of products?
Possibly, but I was able to ask that question myself.
Yes, and that's why I'm asking you about your involvement in this discussion. Were you involved? Do you remember having a discussion with Mark Stapley about the subject of seeking an alternative or comparison quote to compare it with the quotation for Celotex RS5000?
No, I don't remember, actively seeking that comparison.
Were you involved in the discussions about it?
Recall.
Can you explain why you weren't involved, if you didn't think you were?
I don't remember the conversation with Mark that generated that quote. However, I think he did send that quote to me at a later date.
Right. Do you recall, in general terms at least, even if not the specific conversations with Mark Stapley, that on this project, Harley were looking for competitive pricing for the insulation for the building?
I think in general terms, it would be normal to seek like-for-like quotes.
Right. Now, we know that Ms. Walker did provide an alternative quote for K15 on the 4th of March. Let's just look at that. That's HAR 409721. We can see that she actually does provide a quote, second email down. Can you see that? See that? and it's for the attention of Mark. It's an email from Jill Walker at SIG, addressed to Mark. Further to your recent inquiry, please find attached the requested quotation. And the quotation itself is at HAR 409722. Let's just look at that. And we can see there that it's a quotation sent to Mark on the 4th of March 2015, re 10 K15 Grenfell Tower, and they quoted for the Cooltherm K15 in the dimensions we see there, and the price there is £19.42p, and you can see that the discount is 26%. Do you see that?
Yes.
So the discount that you were getting or being offered by SIG on the Cooltherm K15 was just a little over half as good as the discount that you were being given on the Celotex RS5000. Do you remember that?
At the time, I remember seeing the quotes at the time when Mark had sent them to me, but
Yes.
that specific discount's not jumped out to me.
Right. Do you remember asking? Did it occur to you why it was that Mark Stapley was looking for a product for use on Grenfell Tower that was not stipulated in the NBS specification?
I don't know.
I mean, you do realise, or did realise at the time, did you, that K15 was not mentioned in the NBS specification?
Yes, that would have been around the time that I'd read the NBS, I think.
Yes. Did it not occur to you to ask him, well, why are you looking for quotes on an alternative product that isn't specified even as an alternative product in the NBS spec?
I don't remember if I questioned him. It could be an assumption that he's, as I said before, looking for a price comparison.
Did Mark Stapley, to your knowledge, think that K15 was an equivalent product to Celotex?
I think that was a common thought.
Right. Did you know what Mark Stapley had done by way of investigation of K15's fire performance?
At that time, I don't know.
Right. Was it Mark Stapley who suggested K15's use on Grenfell Tower, or its suitability for use on Grenfell Tower?
Possibly.
Would it be fair to say, looking at the emails we've been through, both those from Celotex and from SIG in relation to the K15, that K15 was being considered as an alternative insulation for Grenfell Tower as early as March 2015?
It may well have been, but
And would you agree that it appears that it was being considered from a price or budget perspective and not in relation to lead times?
Having not been involved with it at that particular time, I don't know.
Was Harley shopping around for the best price on insulation, regardless of whether or not it was stipulated in the NBS spec?
I don't think so.
How else can you explain why it was that Mark Stapley was looking for a quotation for K15, which was not in the NBS spec, other than on price grounds?
I think, as I said before, it's to see where the comparative prices are with the different products.
Were you under the impression that these products, Celotex RS5000 and Kingspan K15 Cooltherm K15, were simply interchangeable?
My perception at the time is that they were equivalent products.
Equivalent in what way?
Their use above 18 metres and their insulation value.
And how had you formed that impression, do you think?
My previous experience of K15 and the what I'd been told by Jonathan Room, and just my probably basic understanding of use of those insulations over 18 metres.
Can we look at your witness statement at page 8, please? Paragraph 26. This is where you deal with the question of K15. And you say at paragraph 26 there, halfway, or just a little below halfway down that paragraph, 5 lines up from the bottom of page 8, you say there was a small amount of Kingspan K15 supplied by SIG plc, which was used on Grenfell Tower. The reason for this was that we were informed by SIG plc that they had mistakenly sold an order of Celotex RS5000 intended for Grenfell Tower elsewhere. SIG plc offered the Kingspan insulation as a substitute product. I was told by SIG plc that it was an equivalent product to the Celotex, and I had no reason to doubt this. As a result, an order of Kingspan was used to avoid causing what appeared to be an unnecessary delay to the work programme. Now, you say there that you were told by SIG plc that the Kingspan product was an equivalent product. Do you remember who at SIG said that?
I think my recollection is that initial conversation was a phone call, and my point of contact at SIG was Jill Walker.
Right. So is your answer to my question that it was Jill Walker at SIG who told you that K15 was equivalent to RS5000?
In this scenario, yes.
In this scenario. Okay. Can we look at a document? It's SIG 6013. SIG 6013, please. Now, this is an email chain between you and Jill Walker at SIG on the 26th of May 2015. So this is a bit later in the year. Just in general terms, is it fair to say that SIG were the suppliers of the insulation product for Grenfell?
At this point in time, they were, yes.
I mean, they sat between Celotex or Kingspan and Harley in the supply chain. Is that right?
Sorry, said that again?
They would sit between Celotex or Kingspan and Harley in the supply chain.
Yes, I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Now, let's look at the bottom email on page 2, if we can. We can see that at the very bottom there, on the 26th of May, Jill Walker emails you and says, "Hi, Ben, the delivery we arranged for the 3rd will now go on to the 10th. Celotex have pushed out the lead time on this product, ! And we can see your reply above that. You say, "Are you joking? Is K15 held in stock at the same thickness? Is the delivery for this week still on?" What was the reason that you inquired about K15?
My recollection of this delay, I think I was notified originally with a phone call, and the sort of purpose of the phone call was to give me a quick heads up that there may be a problem with our supply of pre-ordered Celotex, and I think in that phone call we discussed as a remedy for SIG not being able to deliver on time is, would we take K15 as an alternative? And I think my reply at the time was, we'll find out what the delay is going to be first. We'll park that issue until you can tell me, give me a better idea of what the actual delay is going to be, which I think is where Jill kicks off with this email to me.
Well, this phone call that you're talking about, did that happen before Jill Walker sent the email to you at 13:53 on the 26th of May 2015?
It would have done.
Yes. And then we can see your response about K15.
Yes.
And my question was, why did you ask her about K15 as an alternative?
I think we discussed it as an alternative on the phone.
I see. So before the email of the 26th. How soon before the 26th did you have that phone call, do you think?
It would possibly have been that day.
Right. If you'd had a phone call with Jill Walker that day about K15, why did you need to ask her whether it's still held in stock at the same thickness as you do in your responsive email?
Can you just scroll down to the
Yes, of course.
email from Jill Walker?
I think we're on the bottom of page 2. I don't think there's any earlier email.
Yeah, so yeah,
The bottom email is the
Yeah.
one to you at 13:53, where she tells you that the delivery we arranged for the 3rd will now go out on the 10th.
yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I've forgotten your original
So
question.
my question is really, if you'd had a discussion with her about K15 as an alternative, prior to her sending you this email,
Yeah.
why did you respond to her by asking her whether K15 was still held in stock at the same thickness?
It was a lead time issue.
Well, I have to say, Mr. Bailey, looking at your message, which begins with the words, "Are you joking?" that strikes me as an immediate reaction, not one which follows a telephone call in which you've already been told that. Do you think you might be wrong about that?
So it was. So we'd arranged the delivery previously on a schedule, and she's notifying me that it's delayed, essentially. So this is the notification that. So I'm getting my words mixed up. We'd arranged that delivery for Celotex on the 3rd, and that was going to be delayed already, and that's now pushed back to the 10th. So that's the context of the phone call, that the delivery was going to be on the 3rd, all things being well with the Celotex. But if it was going to be a problem, it was the K15 we discussed could be used as a solution, which is where I'm saying, that's longer than we were expecting as a delay. That's my "Are you joking?" email.
Are you confident that you discussed K15 as an alternative with Jill Walker before she sent her email to you, to which you're responding?
That's my recollection.
Right. You see, we've seen from the emails in March that you'd already had, or Harley had already had, discussions about the availability of K15 as an equivalent to Celotex. And I just want to ask you whether, in fact, it's possible that actually what happened was that you discussed lead times with her, but not the suitability of K15. And then when she tells you that the delivery for RS5000 is going to be delayed, you then ask her about K15 because you think it's an equivalent product and wanted to know whether it could be substituted. Is that not how it happened?
I had a previous thought in my head anyway that K15 and RS5000 were equivalent products, and I think the conversations I had with SIG didn't conflict with that.
No, and we don't see anything in Jill Walker's email to you where she suggests the use of K15 as an alternative.
No.
And is it fair that had she discussed that with you as an alternative on the previous phone call prior to this email, she would have suggested it in the email itself rather than leaving it to you to ask?
That's possible, yes.
Now, we asked Simon Lawrence of Ryden about K15 and why it was substituted. And he said, and I'll just put the transcript reference into this transcript, day 24, page 150, lines 13 to 19. He said, "I think it's relating to their credit limit and Harley ceasing to trade one company and starting with another, but it was not something I knew at the time." Was Mr. Lawrence correct about that? That the substitute of K15 for Celotex something to do with Harley's solvency at the time?
No, I think the only time it was substituted was when there was a problem with supply.
Right. And can we go to the very top of the email chain, please, we've still got here, which should be page 1. And we can see that at the very top, you send Miss Walker the same day a purchase order in response to her email almost immediately back to you telling you that delivery for this week for K15 was okay. You see what she says there. And then you go back to her and say, as discussed, please see purchase order attached for the K15 order. This quantity should be taken off the total PO on the Celtex or Celotex order issued on the 25th of March 2015. You see that?
Yes.
Was this May 2015 order the first time that you had ordered Kingspan K15 for use at Grenfell?
I believe so, yes.
Now, you can see that Ms. Walker's initial email to you, as we saw at the bottom of this email chain, was timed at 13:53, the one that starts the email chain off. And your order, as we can see from the top of the email chain, is placed at 14:02, 9 minutes later. Do you think that that was enough time fully to investigate the fire safety of K15 and whether it was a suitable product for use on the building?
That timestamp's incorrect
The timestamp is incorrect.
on the email.
Which timestamp are you talking about?
1402.
Which timestamp?
At the top of the email.
1402.
Because I've checked this.
You've checked it, have you? What have you found?
The purchase order was generated about an hour after the initial email.
This is the first I think I've heard of it. But what is the correct time for that email?
I believe it was 14:57.
Can you explain how it came about then that the email says 1402? I would agree with you that it says 1407. Her response to you is 1407, and yours is 1402.
Yeah,
But
the
what should it
the
say?
time stamps on the previous emails don't add up.
Right. Even allowing for the hour that elapsed, well, let me ask you, did you undertake any investigation as to the fire safety of Kingspan K15 in that hour?
My recollection is that I did inquire with the design office where Dan and Mark Stapley were to double check the U values or the thermal performance of the K15 versus the RS5000, and I also noticed on the BBA certificate that we had at the time that it also stated it was Class O performance.
Are you saying that in that hour, between being told by Jill Walker that delivery for this week was okay for Kingspan K15 and the timing of the purchase order going out, you say an hour later, you checked the BBA certificate for Kingspan K15?
I inquired in the office, yes.
You inquired in the office.
Yes.
Let's just take this
I
in
was
stages.
in the office at the time.
Yes. You inquired in the office. You say you inquired in the office where Dan and Mark Stapley were. Did you ask Dan Anketell-Jones about whether K15 was suitable for use at Grenfell Tower?
I don't know if it was specifically Dan or Mark.
Right. What question did you ask them?
Can we substitute this?
What did they say?
I think it was a quick check of the comparison, of the two documents.
Which two
The
documents?
two, the either BBA documents or the brochures of them, and confirm that those. I think it was mainly the insulation value, but also confirm that they both said Class O.
Did they tell you one or other of them, had checked the BBA certificate for Kingspan K15?
I think I was there with them.
You were there with them. Did you see them check it or check it yourself?
I think we did it together.
Right. Can we look, please, at that certificate. It's BBA 5036. Now, I just need to be very clear about what we're looking at. This is the BBA certificate for Kingspan K15. Now, this is dated the 17th of December 2013. Is this the certificate that you and Daniel Anketell-Jones and Mark Stapley looked at in that hour on the 26th of May 2015 before ordering it from SIG?
I believe we had an earlier issued certificate than that.
What was the date of that earlier issued certificate?
I think it was the first issue. The one I've seen that we had on file at the time was in 2008.
Right. Did you know at the time there had been a second issue?
I did not.
Okay, well, let's see on this document, because this is the up-to-date one, or the current one, as at the date of your involvement with this project. Why would you be looking at an out-of-date certificate in order to check whether it was compliant, or even to check the U values, and didn't have an up-to-date certificate to look at?
I wasn't aware it being updated.
You may not have been, but can you explain why neither Daniel Anketell-Jones nor Mark Stapley were aware that it had been updated?
I don't know.
All right, but let's look at page 1. And it says there, and tell me if there's anything that's different in this certificate from the version you looked at on the day. But I'm going to proceed, Mr. Bailey, on the basis that there's no difference, but I may be wrong about that. If you can look at page 1, it describes the product as Cooltherm K15 rain screen insulation board, and it says that it relates to that product, a rigid phenolic board with foiled composite facings for use as external thermal insulation on new and existing steel frame or masonry walls. And then a little bit lower down, it tells you the thermal performance, so it gives you the thermal conductivity, and then underneath that, the condensation risk, and then this, behavior in relation to fire. The product will not contribute to the development stages of a fire or present a smoke or toxic hazard. See section 8. Did you look at that on the afternoon of the 26th of May, 2015?
It's a familiar statement to me on that sheet.
Right. And if we look at section 8, it's page 5, please. It says, under the heading, behavior in relation to fire, the product, 8.1, the product is classified as class 0 or low risk as defined in the documents supporting the National Building Regulations. Just pausing there, what did you understand this to mean in the context of an insulation product?
My understanding at the time was class O was appropriate for use over 18 metres.
What did it mean, though? What did class O or class 0 mean or signify?
I think I had a misconception of what class O meant at the time.
Well, what did you think it meant at the time?
I think what I thought it meant at the time is what I think the phrase limited combustibility describes. That's what I had in my head at the time.
Right. Did you know, or do you recall, that under approved document B, insulation had to be of limited combustibility to be used on buildings over 18 metres in height, unless it had been through a BS 8414 test?
I wasn't familiar with the phrase limited combustibility as it appears in the building regulations at that time, so I think that's why I had a misconception.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, it may do. You said you thought class 0 at the time meant limited combustibility. Or have I got that wrong?
What the words limited combustibility describe. As I said, I wasn't aware of the phrase limited combustibility at the time.
I see.
I think my understanding of class O could be described as what the words limited combustibility mean.
And what does that mean?
hard to ignite and hard to sustain a flame.
Right. In fact, there's nothing in this certificate, and we can look at the rest of it, but do you remember that there's nothing actually in the certificate that says that the product was of limited combustibility?
Yes, I can see that now.
Yeah. Now, looking at page 6, please, let's look at 8.2. What it actually says is, when tested to BS 8414 of 2002, the following specific cladding construction met the criteria as stated in BRE Report BR 135. And then we can see what the construction elements are. You've got insulation board, you've got 6mm cement particle boards attached to an aluminium railing system on the substrate. You've then got 40mm deep ventilated cavity provided between the boards and the cement particle board, fire stopping as described, and then the temperature measured during the stated time test. You see that? And then the certificate goes on to say, underneath it, in slightly smaller letters, and it's a footnote 1, and you can see the footnote 1 goes back to the words when tested at the top of the page. Do you see that? Footnote 1 says, the test result relates only to this specific construction and a separate test would be required to establish the performance of any other combination of materials. And then at paragraph 8.3, it continues, the product incorporated in the construction defined in section 8.2 can be used in buildings with a floor more than 18 metres above ground level. Fire breaks should be used at every floor level after the first floor. Would you agree with me that the BBA certificate made it clear that the K15 product could be used only in the construction defined in section 8.2, in other words, in the specific system with the elements set out there, and no other system?
In this updated certificate, it gives a scenario where it has been tested. It mentions separate tests.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Was that in the certificate that you read on the afternoon of the 26th of May?
I don't recall.
You don't recall. If you did look at this certificate, and if the certificate you looked at contained what I've just shown you there under 8.2 and the note at 8.3, why was it not clear to you that K15 could not be used at Grenfell Tower because the rain screen construction did not contain elements that were precisely the same as those in the system which had been tested under BS 8414?
I suppose I'd have to. My comfort with K15 came from my previous job, and that again was ACM and a blockwork wall.
Do you accept that had you looked at this certificate at the time, which was and this being the current certificate at the time, you would have realised that K15 was a wholly inappropriate insulation to be used on Grenfell Tower because the rain screen being proposed was not cement particle boards?
As I said at the time, it was a product I felt comfortable with, and I think everyone else felt comfortable with, based on previous experience, knowledge of other buildings where that product's used, because even now, looking at where I know it's been used in other buildings, it doesn't comply to that.
Can you explain why you, as a project manager, did not pause and take a step back and ask to look at the up-to-date BBA certificate and make absolutely sure that you were satisfied that K15 could be used on Grenfell Tower?
Well, as I said earlier, on regards to the updated certificate, I wasn't aware there'd been an updated certificate, and in respect of reading the whole BBA certificate. I'm not in a technical role. My role is, as project manager, is procurement, planning, programme, and ordering materials.
Can you explain why Harley had an outdated certificate as opposed to the up-to-date certificate in its possession?
I can't give a reason for that.
Can we look at the LABC certificate for this product? This is a KIN 3016733, please. And this is dated the 30th of March 2015. So this is after, only a week or two after the first investigation by Mark Stapley of SIG about using K15 as an alternative to RS5000 at Grenfell Tower. But it predates your ordering of K15 by about 2 months. Just under 2 months. Did you read this certificate at the time?
No.
Have you ever seen this document before?
I don't believe so.
Right. Would you agree with me that if you were really interested in making sure you fully understood K15 as a new product, you would have checked this document and looked at it?
I wasn't aware of the LABC at the time.
You weren't aware of the LABC? What, as a body?
No.
Oh, I see. Now, when you made the order on the afternoon of the 26th of May 2015, after, as you say, having had this discussion at Harley with Daniel Anketell-Jones and Mark Stapley about its suitability, did you have consciously in mind the technical brochure for the Optima product that we saw earlier?
No.
You didn't. Because that product had said in terms that for buildings over 18 metres, Kingspan K15 can be used. But I just want to make sure that was, make sure how much, if at all, that was part of your thinking at the time.
Optima wouldn't have been in my mind for this project because that insulation panel can't be cut. I think I found it an interesting product at the time because it can offer good thermal values, but it does it by being a vacuum. I believe, this is my recollection anyway, it does it by being a vacuum-packed panel, so it can't be cut, it will break the vacuum. So Optima is not what I think.
No, Optima isn't, and I'm not suggesting that it was. What I'm putting to you is that in the technical brochure that we looked at before, it said that for buildings over 18 metres, Kingspan K15 can be used. Do you remember I showed you that?
You did.
My question is really, did that play any part in your thinking on the 26th of May 2015, in the afternoon of that day when you ordered the product from SIG?
I can't remember if that specific data sheet would have done so.
Right. Did you ever investigate whether the system tested for K15, which would result in it getting a classification under 8414, was the same system as Grenfell Tower?
No.
Did you ever investigate whether the product had test evidence which met the definition of limited combustibility?
As I said before, limited combustibility wasn't a phrase I was familiar with, but no.
Did you investigate whether there was a desktop study available in relation to K15? Do you know what I mean by a desktop study?
I didn't at the time, so no.
Did you investigate whether RS5000 was available in a shorter period or lead time from any other supplier?
At that point in time, I don't think so.
Why is that?
I don't remember specifically, but I could probably offer some insight in that. I think SIG were a installation supplier that we had a credit account with, and a relationship with. You know, it makes, if you don't have a credit account with someone, it's quite difficult to order it without going through a lengthy process of setting those kind of things up.
Do I take it from that answer that if you had not stuck with SIG or SIG but had gone to a different supplier, there would have had to be credit checks?
Yeah.
And given Harley's financial difficulties at the time, would those have been difficult for Harley to satisfy?
My memory is that we had a good credit rating at the time, and we wouldn't have had any problems opening up a new account. It's more to do with the time it takes.
In fact, we see later on in the record that you ordered K15 and RS5000 from CCF, didn't you?
Correct.
So why didn't you approach them at the time that the Celotex RS5000 lead time was pushed out in May 2015 and stick with SIG?
Other than what I've just told you, I don't know.
Did you discuss the substitution with Studio E or Exova or Ryden, or for what it's worth, building control?
I think I notified Ryden, or spoke about it with Ryden.
Right. Did you discuss the question of compliance with regulations with Ryden?
Only insofar as that the insulation values were very similar, and it was a Class A product.
Do you remember who it was at Ryden that you had that discussion with?
I believe it was Simon Lawrence or Simon O'Connor.
We looked at the contracts earlier on today. Was there any discussion within Harley about the need to get Ryden's express consent for the substitution?
I don't think so.
Can we look at the purchase order, which is attached to the email to Ms. Walker that we've been looking at? It's SIG 6014, please. This order, as we've seen, is placed on the same day, 26th of May. You can see there from the top right-hand corner, 26th of May 2015, and you can see the order and the price, or at least the total amount. What was the 1 week delay that RS5000 had been subject to at this point in time, late May 2015, so critical to the project program that you had to change insulation products altogether?
At the time, I think it was. We felt that we were under pressure on the program.
Yes. You see, you'd seen that it was a 1 week delay for RS5000, and here we have the purchase order for delivery on the 4th of June 2015. That would make up something like between 2 and 4 days, wouldn't it, of time?
So I can't work out the time, the days in my head.
Well, delivery of the RS5000 was going to be going out on the 10th of June.
Yes.
And here we have an order which will be delivered on the 4th of June instead.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ignore I suppose if you include the weekends, that's 6 days. And if you exclude the weekends, I suppose that's 4 days. Was the delay so critical by this stage that you had to change insulation products as opposed simply to catering for a few days' delay?
From my sort of experience of trying to get materials to site and trying to fit to a program at a time. I appreciate what you're saying is, it's less than a week. When you've got limited materials for trying to keep to a program, that 1 week delay can be quite significant, because you could have teams of fixers not being able to do anything because there's not enough of other materials for them to go and do something else. Does that make sense? Coupled with Ryden, always putting pressure on subcontractors to stick to programs. I can remember feeling that we are under a time pressure, and this is critical.
I can understand why projects are under time pressure. That's a fact of life. But what was it at this point that was so critical that it was better to change products altogether rather than just deal with the few days delay that the difference would have made?
I don't remember a particular driver to this, other than the general industry the general industry practice that I've already said.
Did the time pressure that we've been looking at contribute to the lack of investigations that you made regarding K15's suitability for use on Grenfell Tower?
I don't think so. As I said, it was a product we all felt comfortable with.
Do you know even roughly where on the building the K15 went that was ordered
From
in
this
purchase order?
I think it's on the west elevation.
The west. Are there any records which would show where this order went on the building?
I think there's some photos of the building.
Photos, right, but no written records or delivery records or records from the installers?
In terms of delivery records, I think we've got the delivery notes for it. But in terms of exactly where it's fitted, no.
Right. You mentioned photographs. Let's just see if we can look at a couple. First, RYD 3055130, please. Now we think, I'll just wait for the picture to come up. We think this photograph is dated November 2015. And if you look about halfway up, on the spandrel panels next to the two left-hand columns, we can see Kingspan branded insulation. It may need to be blown up a little bit, but would that be right? Am I right in what I'm asking you? That we can see Kingspan?
I can't see it at the moment.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at a different picture. RYD 3051704. This is another photograph showing a different face of the building. Looks like the east face, but you tell me. And again, can you see Kingspan insulation there?
I don't know if you can zoom it in anymore, but yes.
Yes. Do you remember whether K15 or Celotex ever arrived at site in an unbranded form?
So did you say K15 or Celotex?
Yes, either.
Yeah,
of them.
Celotex.
Celotex. Right, so where there's a branding on it, that's K15, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Looking at this progress of the installation at this stage, can you help us with when the photo might have been taken? We think it was about September 2015, but can you help us whether that's right?
I couldn't give you a date.
Right. If we zoom in on the left-hand side of the image, about 3 floors above the mast climber, just to be absolutely clear, I think we can see very clearly some more Kingspan branded insulation.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's also insulation there that's not branded, and that's Celotex, I think you're saying.
I believe so.
Yes, I see. So, and again on the right-hand column, if we just move across the page, we can see the right-hand column there. There's again quite a large quantity of Kingspan branded insulation there too, isn't there?
Yes.
Both sides of the right-hand column. It's on both sides. Now, it would appear then, if we're right about September 2015, then a significant amount of Kingspan had already been installed on the building by that stage. Would that be about right, to the best of your recollection?
Yes.
Now, can I just ask you to look at Mr. Hughes' witness statement? David Hughes of Ryden. He's given evidence already to the inquiry. This is RYD 30's94213, please. 94213. And I'd like us to go together to page 10 and look at paragraph 55. He says there, in December 2015 or January 2016, I discussed with Ben Bailey and agreed the use of Kingspan, as Harley's had difficulty obtaining Celotex from their supplier. As far as I was concerned, Kingspan and Celotex are similar products with similar insulation properties. As far as Ben and I were concerned, it was a like-for-like swap of insulating material. And he goes on, I told Steve Blake and the Clerk of Works, John White, of this use of Kingspan insulation material. Do you recall discussing the use of Kingspan K15 with David Hughes in December 2015 or January 2016?
I don't have a clear recollection of it, but I'm not going to argue with Dave if that's what he says.
Right. Now, Mr. Hughes, when he gave evidence to the inquiry in July, told us that you gave him a data sheet for Kingspan Cooltherm K15. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. Do you remember Mr. Hughes asking for a data sheet?
I don't remember.
Right. Did you and he discuss any aspects of K15 or properties of K15, whether related to fire performance or insulation?
I don't remember.
Do you remember any discussion at all with David Hughes about the use of Kingspan?
Not that I can remember today, no.
Are you able to tell us why, as he says, you sought to agree with him the use of Kingspan in December 2015 or January 2016, when, as we've seen from the previous evidence today, you had already ordered Kingspan in May 2015, and quite a lot of it had already been installed on the building by the end of 2015?
Well, I think there'd been a change in site management. So the people that had been around in May, I don't think were there at the time when Dave was running the job. So I'd imagine it would be to make him aware, and as he says, we agreed to the use of it. I think it would be, from my perspective, a good idea to notify the site management at whatever time ahead of ordering anything that's different to the specification, because you wouldn't want to order, large values of material for it to turn up on site and be turned away.
You say you think there had been a change in something management. Did you say site management?
Sorry, yeah, that was site management. Yeah.
There had been a change in site management by the end of 2015. I see. Did it strike you as strange that David Hughes was asking you about the suitability of the use of Kingspan K15 in circumstances where a lot of it was already on the building?
I don't know if Dave asked me about it. I think he said we discussed it and we agreed it.
Did it not strike you as odd that it was something that needed to be agreed with Ryden, given, as I say, that significant quantities of K15 were already on the building by that time?
I think my take on it is again, as I said, there was a change in site management between when the original order was placed and the subsequent order was placed, and it's to let the new site manager know if he wasn't already aware
Right.
of that. As I explained, you don't want to order these things and have them turned away.
Can we look at CCF 6019, please? This is a cash invoice from CCF to Harley, dated the 10th of September 2015, in relation to a quantity of Kingspan Cooltherm K15 for Grenfell Tower. You can see that's the delivery address, and the price is about £2,500 plus VAT. It would appear from this that Harley placed an order for K15 in May 2015 with SIG, but then a further order in September 2015 with CCF. I think we discussed that a little bit earlier. Is that correct?
It appears to be.
Yes. And now this was a cash invoice from CCF Croydon branch, as we can see from the top left-hand corner of the document. Is that because Harley didn't have a credit account with CCF at that time?
Yeah, it would appear so.
Were Harley forced to purchase this from CCF because of their financial difficulties?
Yes, probably.
Right. Is that because they were unable to make any more orders or take any more orders from SIG?
Yeah, that could happen, yeah.
Right. Was there any discussion with Ryden about this order?
I don't recall.
Was there any discussion with Ryden about the first order back in May 2015 that you made with SIG?
I believe there was, yes.
Do you know who that was a discussion with?
I think I said earlier on Simon Lawrence or Simon O'Connor.
Did you have that discussion with them?
I would have done, yeah.
You would have done. Do you remember it?
I have a recollection of making Ryden aware of it before we ordered it, and then before it arrived on site. Again, for the same reasons I explained.
We don't, I think, see an email on that, but can you tell us in what form that discussion or notification took place?
I think it probably would have been a phone call.
Right. Did CCF Croydon stock RS5000? Celotex RS5000, did you know?
Yes.
They did. Why didn't you order that?
I mean, I don't remember this particular order, or the time around the administration is a bit of a blur, but it could be program related, or lead time related.
No, but you'd found a supplier who was prepared to supply you with insulation on a cash basis. We could see you ordering K15. My question is, why didn't you ask them whether they would supply you with RS5000?
Oh, I may well have done. They may not have been able to deliver it in the time frame we needed it.
Do you remember that? Or are you speculating?
I don't remember it.
Now, Mr. Hughes has referred to a discussion with him in December 15, January 16. But is it possible he's wrong about dates and that you would have had or could have had a conversation with him earlier in 2015?
I think it's possible.
Right. Do you remember whether you talked to Mr. Hughes and obtained his permission to order K15 before you made this order on the 10th of, or shortly before the 10th of September 2015?
I don't remember the exact dates when Dave became involved in the job, so...
After you'd ordered Kingspan Cooltherm K15 for what we now see here as the second time, this is September 15, did you go back to ordering Celotex RS5000 or did you use Kingspan K15 to finish the job? Do you remember?
I believe we went back to RS5000.
I see. Now, can we go back to your witness statement, please, paragraph 9, on page 3. You say in that statement, 4 lines up from the bottom, in the main, the materials I ordered were contained within the specification notes. I had no role in the decision-making about the materials specified. This would have occurred before my involvement. In the light of what we've been looking at together, Mr. Bailey, about the ordering of K15, would you like to correct that statement?
I think in that statement I'm referring to the materials in the MBS. And I accept that I had a role in the Kingspan substitution, but I think what I'm getting at in my statement is the other, the materials that were specified. Not, I accept that the Kingspan was not specified.
Thank you. Can we then turn to a slightly different subtopic, Rockwool? We looked at Rockwool earlier on in the context of eco-funding. Did you at any stage consider whether any other insulation product might be more suitable for use on Grenfell Tower than either RS5000 or K15?
I don't think so, no.
Do you recall from your time at Harley before your involvement on the Grenfell Tower project that Rockwool Duo Slab, which was a mineral wool insulation product, had been used on previous Harley projects such as Ferrier Point and Chalcott's estate?
I think I'd visited some of those sites at points in my part-time roles. But I don't think I was aware of the properties of Rockwool versus four-phase rigid foam insulation boards at the time.
Right. When you were working on the Merritt House project in Colindale from your time there, what insulation product was used there? Do you remember?
That was Kingspan K15.
That was K15. You told us that earlier. Was there any consideration on that project of using mineral wool?
I don't think so.
Do you know why that was?
I think that insulation was an architect specification.
Right. I think that might answer my next question, which is on the Merritt House project, who was it who decided that K15 should be used?
To the best of my recollection, that would have been the architect.
I see. Did you ever consider what difference it might make using a PIR product rather than a mineral wool insulation product in terms of fire safety?
No.
Right. Now, we've got paragraph 9 of your statement up on the screen. You've referred there to the specification notes there. Let's just look at those. Before I turn to those, I'll just repeat what you say there. You say you had no role in the decision-making about the materials specified for the rain screen cladding, and you refer to the specification notes that you say were prepared before your involvement. Can we look at those? They are at HAR 30s10060. Let's just be clear about the document we're looking at. If you go to you've got your statement there. Perhaps the easier way of doing this is to show you paragraph 9 you've got. Paragraph 7, I'll go to the Harley spec in a second. I should show you paragraph 7 of your statement, where you say, I first became aware that Harley might be involved in the Grenfell Tower refurbishment project at some point in 2014. I've been shown a number of Harley emails and can see that I began to be copied into emails relating to Grenfell Tower from around September 2014. I became more actively involved in around February 2015. So I'm just reminding you of that. Now can we look at the Harley specification for the project? That's at RYD 3046822. You can see from the bottom right-hand corner that it's dated the 15th of January 2015, and it was first created by Kevin Lamb. And then this version is the one which is revision D of the 15th of July 2015, which has been stamped A by the architect Neil Crawford on the 17th of July 2015. But looking at this document, are you familiar with it?
Yes.
You are. Were you involved in any way in compiling it when it was first produced in the January of 2015?
No.
Now, you can see that although there are a number of specifications set out, for example, for windows and for glazing and for cladding, we see no mention in there of the insulation product to be used on the building. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you know why that is?
At the time, I never noticed it.
Right. Now, given that you were in on emails, as you say, on this project from September 2014, would you have been in a position to consider or raise questions in relation to the materials specified prior to the composition of this document, this specification notes, being finalised in January 2015?
I don't. No.
You don't. When you say you don't know, you mean you don't know, or is the answer no?
The answer's no.
Right. Now, we know, as we've seen earlier this morning, that you were involved in liaising with Mr. Room at Celotex, specifically about RS5000, and it seems specifically for Grenfell, back in the summer of 2014. Given that discussion that you'd had at that time, do you know why RS5000 was omitted from this specification notes when it was produced in January 2015, a number of months later?
I don't. As I said, I never noticed it wasn't on there.
No. When did you first see this document in the process?
I don't remember.
Why was it sent to you? Do you remember?
I think I don't remember specifically receiving it, but I'm familiar with it. But I was familiar with it throughout the job.
Would it be usual to leave out the insulation specification when designing a facade system?
My understanding of this drawing is that it's a key drawing to help decipher the detailed drawings and the fabrication drawings, in the rest of the drawing pack. It seems to be an omission from this page. I can't offer any reasons as to why it's not there.
And it's not in the drawings either. If we scroll down the next page, we can see some drawings.
Yeah.
I think you'll accept from me that there is no mention of any specification, whether RS5000 or even FR5000, in these documents. And my question is, would that be usual? Would it be usual to omit the specification for insulation when designing a facade system?
I don't think it'd be intentional.
You say you didn't spot it. Can you explain why you didn't spot it?
I can't explain it, no.
Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient moment for
Does that
an
suit
afternoon
you?
break? It does. We're about to change to a different topic.
Yes, well, that probably would be a good point then. Mr. Bailey, we'll have another short break now. We'll come back at 25 to 4, please.
Of course.
And remember not to talk to anyone about your evidence
Of course.
or anything to do with it while you're out of the room.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You go to the usher, please. 25 to 4, please. Right, would you like to ask Mr. Bailey to come back in, please? Thank you. Right, ready to carry on, Mr. Bailey?
I am.
Good, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Bailey, before the break, we were talking about Kingspan K15 and the occasion on the 26th of May 2015 when you tell us that you examined the BBA certificate at Harley's offices with Daniel Anketell-Jones and Mark Stapley. And I put to you the 2013 second issue of that document.
Yes.
You said you didn't look at that, but you looked at the first issue. We've now extracted that from the record, and I'd like to look at that with you briefly. It's BBA 6038, please. BBA 6038. And we can see that it's the same product, and this is the date of first issue, 27th of October 2008, if we have the bottom of the screen up on the screen there. And just looking at the document, is that the document that you looked at together with Mr. Anketell-Jones and Mr. Stapley on the afternoon of the
I believe so, yes.
26th of May 2015? Right, and it says, behaviour in relation to fire, the boards will not contribute to the development stages of a fire or present a smoke or toxic hazard, see section 7. Let's look at that. Page 5, please, first of all. Behaviour in relation to fire, and you can see that it says the following fire tests have been undertaken to BS 8414, and you can see there that it sets out what the test comprised. And then at 7.2, the product is classified as class 0 or low risk, and therefore could be used in accordance with the provisions of, and over the top of page 6, it says approved document B, paragraph 8.4, and paragraphs 12.5 and 12.6, see also diagram 40. And then at 7.3 it says, in buildings with a floor more than 18 metres above ground level, advice should be sought from the certificate holder. When you examined this certificate, did you read paragraph 7.3?
I did not.
You did not. Can you explain why not?
I'm not there in a technical capacity, and I was there with Mark and Dan looking at it with them, but not specifically looking at these clauses. I saw the Class O, and that's what stood out to me.
Right. Despite the fact that it says class 0, do we take it that because you, at Harley, you plural, did not read clause 7.3, you did not seek advice from the certificate holder, namely Kingspan?
Yes.
Right. Now, you also said before the break that you had discussions with either or both of Simon Lawrence or Simon O'Connor about the substitution of K15 for RS 5000. And you said it would have taken place on the phone. Can we first of all see what Mr. Lawrence says about the substitution of K15? Day 24, please, page 124. And I'd like you to go to line 4. And this is in the context, I should say, of K15. And the question, given that it was Ryden's contractual responsibility to ensure that the insulation was compliant with the building regulations, who did you consider was responsible for making sure that that obligation was complied with? Answer, I would expect Harley's to do the design. I would expect Studio E to check that design to the best of their knowledge. And I would then expect then Studio E to take that to building control and have a conversation with building control. And then if you look at page 149, page 149, this is again in the conversation of, in the context of K15, line 2. Were you aware of any discussions either on site or between the people on site and the architectural team, as you call them, about the substitution of RS5000 with Cooltherm K15? And then he says, no, I didn't know K15 was involved at all until the evidence has come up. Is he right about that?
I have a different recollection.
You have a different recollection. And can we look at Simon O'Connor, day 26? Please, day 26, and I'd like to go to page 98. Now, at page 98, can we start at line 8? My question to him was, were you aware that Kingspan Cooltherm K15 insulation was used on Grenfell Tower as well as Celotex RS5000 as an insulation product? Answer, I wasn't then, no. Question, you weren't. Now, were you aware that Kingspan, well, you wouldn't have been aware, I think, that Kingspan Cooltherm K15 was ordered in May 2015 and delivered in June 2015 to site? I wouldn't have been aware of that, no. Right. Is he right about that?
Is he referring to when he left the project, when he, in June 2015?
Well, we know when he left the project. I'm showing you his evidence, and I'm asking you whether his recollection accords with your recollection about whether you actually ever had a conversation with Mr. O'Connor about the substitution of Cooltherm K15 for RS5000.
I think, from what I said earlier on, my conversation would have been with either Simon, and I was unclear on that. I think seeing that, it would make me say it was Simon Lawrence I had the conversation with.
Right. And can you be more precise about when you had a conversation or conversations with Simon Lawrence about the substitution of K15 for RS5000?
I couldn't give you an exact date, but it would most likely be between the time the supply issue came up and then before it arrived on site, because, as I said earlier on, the last thing you want is to have it all turned away. Having,
What did Simon Lawrence say to you in response to your telling him? Do you recall?
I think he saw the reasoning behind it in terms of programme, keeping everyone working, and agreed to it, I believe.
Agreed to it straight away?
Yeah, I believe so.
Right. So were you aware then that when he was agreeing to it, he had not gone back to Studio E and asked them for their opinion about the suitability of K15?
He may have done after the fact. At that time, he wouldn't have been able to, would he?
So you were prepared to take him at his word, even though you weren't told that he would need to check it first with the architect. Is that right?
I wasn't aware at the time of the steps that could have been taken. And I think it was a mistake to not put this substitution in writing.
Did you seek any written confirmation from Simon Lawrence that the substitution was acceptable?
I did not, and that was...
Why is that?
I didn't think to at the time.
Would it not have been sensible to do that, given that this was a substitution of an insulation product?
I think in hindsight, yes. And as I said before, it was a mistake to not do that.
And my question on top of that is, why were you prepared to go along with Simon Lawrence's consent to using the product in circumstances where you knew that he hadn't already checked it first with Studio E?
In my mind, it was a like-for-like replacement with the RS5000.
Let's look at infill panels, different topic. Now, these are the panels that sat between the windows and above the cladding spandrel panels. So, just to be clear, you know what I'm talking about when I say
Yes,
window
yes.
infill panels. All right. Can we first go to HAR 17738, please? HAR 17738. Now, we can see that this is the 3rd of March, and it's an email from Kevin Lamb to Simon Lawrence, copied to a number of people, including Daniel Anketell-Jones and you, and there are attached to it a number of drawings. Did you review those drawings when you received this email?
I don't know about on receipt of the email, but it's. I probably would have looked at the drawings at some point, yeah.
Right. Why did you think you were being copied in on this email?
Well, I think are they revised drawings?
Right. And let's turn to one of them, which is HAR 403953. And this is revision D, which was produced on the 3rd of March 2015. Do you see in the revisions box where it says fire brakes added? You see that?
Yes.
And we can see that it's authored by Kevin Lamb, and if we pan back out again, it says approved for construction. And if we look at it a bit more closely, we can see that there are two panels in hatch, the P1 panel and the P2 panel. You see that?
I do.
P1 panel is the one that sits between the windows of the kitchen and the bedroom, and P2 is the one within the window itself, which has the kitchen extract fan. So P1 is the big one, and P2 is the small one. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you yourself, when you received this pack of drawings, make any investigation as to which materials comprised P1 and P2 respectively?
I don't think so.
Now, you were provided with the specification notes, or specification, which Kevin Lamb had done, on the same day. If we look at an email, HAR 17746, please, we'll see it. See that there's the email, and the specification is attached as one of the documents. Do you think you reviewed it?
I couldn't say either way
Right.
at that time.
Well, let's turn to it and take it from there. It's HAR 17762. This is a document we looked at just before the break this afternoon, Mr. Bailey. It's originally dated the 15th of January 2015. This one is revision B, 3rd of March 2015. And we can see that the design of the infill panel at P1, just halfway down the column on the left-hand side, was to be formed of a 1.5 millimetre aluminium skin enclosing 25 millimetres of styrofoam. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, styrofoam, am I right, is a trading name for extruded polystyrene insulation material, otherwise known as XPS.
I'm not aware of that, but I'm not
right.
doubting you.
Okay, you don't know that. Do you know who it was who specified XPS, extruded polystyrene, for use on Grenfell Tower?
I think from other evidence I've seen, there's some handwriting on this drawing, and it's been identified as Mark Stapley, hasn't it?
Well, you're commenting on the evidence. Do you know from your recollection at the time who it was who specified XPS for use on Grenfell Tower?
I wasn't aware of that at the time, no.
Okay. Now, Kevin Lamb was asked this question, and I'll show you what he says. It's transcript for day 38. at page 167, and I'd just like to show you line 21 and following. He says at line 21, he's asked by Ms. Grange at line 21, do you recall who told you that you were using products from Panel Systems? Answer, Ben. Question, Ben, query, you clearly remember that, do you? Answer, without a doubt, yes. And then if we turn to page 168, how come you're so clear on that when in relation to other discussions you can't be sure who it was that told you? Answer, because he, that's you, he was doing purchasing, and at the time what they would do is products would have to come from suppliers that they used so as they can get credits and what have you. So I remember asking Ben, where are we getting these panels from? He said, go to Panel Systems. There's no one else in the company at that point, or maybe Mark Stapley, but I know I didn't talk to Mark. You know you didn't talk to Mark? Question. Answer, didn't talk to Mark Stapley. No. On your understanding, was it Ben who specified these panels for use? Answer, he said we would go to Panel Systems. Question, right. And all they offered were single colour panels with a styrofoam core. And I want to ask you head on, Mr. Bailey, was it you who specified these panels for use at Grenfell Tower?
No.
Who was it?
Mark Stapley.
You see, Mr. Lamb is crystal clear in his recollection that it wasn't Mark Stapley, but it was you. Can you account for that?
Well, Mark ordered the panels. And in January, I think.
Right. Do you know why he said go to Panel Systems?
Yeah, that wasn't me.
You weren't there in early January, mid-January. We know that. But you had taken over as project manager by the 3rd of March, hadn't you?
Oh, yeah, I believe so.
Yes. And we can see from the 3rd of March email that you received this document. When you did you investigate how it came about that XPS had been stipulated as part of the spec?
I didn't. I think they'd already been ordered at that point.
Now, you say you didn't order from Panel Systems. My question was, why would Mark Stapley have told Kevin Lamb to go to Panel Systems or use a product made by Panel Systems as opposed to anybody else?
I don't know.
Now, neither Panel Systems nor XPS as a material were contained in the NBS specification or in the January 2014 Harley quotation. That's right, isn't it?
If that's what you're telling me, I don't know any differently.
Well, when you reviewed the H92 part of the NBS spec and all the other parts that were to do with Harley's work package, did you see Panel Systems referred to?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing Panel Systems.
Did you see extruded polystyrene, whether it's styrofoam or any other brand name, referred to?
I don't believe so.
Do you know why it was that a specific product, such as Panel Systems or XPS, wasn't in the NBS specification, but is on the Harley spec that Mr. Lamb created?
I don't know.
And coming back to Mr. Lamb's evidence, where he says he's crystal clear that he didn't talk to Mark Stapley, it was you who said go to Panel Systems. Are you saying he's wrong about that in his recollection?
I've got a different recollection. I don't think I even knew of Panel Systems at the time. Now,
If we can go back to the spec itself, HAR 30177762, please, we can see P1. We looked at it before. It's just panels with an outer skin, aluminium, on both sides, and an inner core of 25 millimeters of styrofoam. Can you explain why there's no specific product referred to there? It just says panels.
I can't explain that, no.
What specific when you saw this document, what specific product did you think that was referring to? P1 panels.
In terms of a specific product, I don't know, but I could deduce from that makeup it's a insulated sandwich panel. But in terms of specific products,
right?
I don't know.
Would you accept that, given that there's no specification of a specific product here, it would make it that much harder to investigate that product's properties or performance, for example, in relation to fire performance?
I mean, I don't know if there is a specific brand name for those panels.
Well, let's look at the order process. Can you go, please, to HAR 409695, please? 9695. This is this is an email from Mark Stapley to you on the 12th of March 2015. So about a week and a half after the email, which sends you the revision B of the Harley spec, which we just looked at, and it simply attaches something, a PDF. And we can see from that document that that is a panel systems dispatch note. Perhaps we just have a look at it. It's HAR 409696, please. And it's a dispatch note or an invoice to Harley Curtain Wall to be delivered to CEP. See that? And the product is alu-glaze panels, 28 millimeters thick. Specification alu-glaze. And there you have the composition. External face 1.5 millimeters aluminium, core material 25 millimeters styrofoam, internal face 1.5 millimeters aluminium. And we can see that the product is identified as alu-glaze. Is that the P1 material specified on the Harley spec?
It appears to be.
Yeah. Do you know why the alu-glaze as a product wasn't spelt out on the Harley spec by Kevin Lamb?
I don't know.
Do you remember whether it was you who placed the order with Panel Systems that led to this dispatch note, or whether it was Mark Stapley?
I believe it was Mark Stapley.
I'm so sorry, it's Stapley, is it not Stapley?
Stapley, yeah.
It's Stapley. Were you aware that alu-glaze, as a product, also came in a fire-resistant A1 rated version with a mineral fibre core?
I don't think so.
Was Mark Stapley aware of that, do you know?
I don't know.
Was there any ever discussion or any consideration for use of an alu-glaze A1 rated panel with a fibre core, mineral fibre core, for use at Grenfell Tower?
I don't know.
Did you have any involvement at all in specifying this material or this product for use in this location on the building?
I don't think so.
What was the purpose of Mark Stapley sending you the order note or the dispatch note that he does, as we see on the 12th of March 2015?
Well, I can see it's going to CEP, who are the manufacturers of the windows that these were going into, because they were glazed in the factory. So I would gather from that is to let me know that they're on the way. CB can expect them.
Right. When you saw this document and saw that the core material was styrofoam, did you have any thoughts about whether styrofoam was an appropriate material for use on a high-rise building above 18 metres?
I don't remember my thoughts on this at the time.
Would you agree with me that such a material was required to be of limited combustibility in order to be compliant with the building regulations?
My knowledge then or my knowledge now?
Well, your knowledge then.
I didn't have any. I didn't have a view on it.
Did anybody at Harley seek any information from panel systems as to the fire performance of this product, this alu-glazed panel?
I don't know.
Did you review any sales documentation about the properties of alu-glaze?
No.
Do you accept that, given that styrofoam is not of limited combustibility, it should not have been specified for the P1 panel because it was going to be used above 18 metres?
Sorry, could you say? I'll repeat the question, please.
Well, let me break it down for you. Do you accept that the P1 panel, as we've seen, was part of the external surface of the building?
No.
You don't accept that?
Well, sorry, it's not part of the external wall.
You don't. I see. You say that the P1 panel is not part of the external wall.
Mm.
Why do you say that?
So my current understanding of ADB, my current reading of it is that windows and their inserts are not deemed as part of the wall.
That's your understanding now. But what was your understanding at the time? Did you think at the time that the P1 panel was part of the external wall construction?
I didn't have an understanding of that at the time.
I see. Were you aware of the guidance at the time? And I'm sorry to push this point because I think I know what your answer will be, but I feel I should ask you anyway. Were you aware of the guidance at the time contained in Appendix F of Approved Document B about insulating core panels where they are used for external cladding?
No.
Can we talk about the P2 panel? Now, can we go back to the Harley specification at HAR 3017762? We can see now that just below halfway down, the glazing P2 panels were the same outer core, 1.5 millimetres aluminium skin, but this time the core is 25 millimetres of Kingspan TP10 rigid insulation. Do you know who specified the Kingspan TP10 for use on Grenfell Tower?
I believe that was Kevin.
Yes. Now, it wasn't on the NBS specification or indeed in the January 2014 Harley quotation either, was it?
No.
No. Do you know why a specific product was not specified at that point in the design process?
I don't know.
And again, do you accept that this was an insulating product for use on the external wall of the building? Or do you say the same thing as the P1?
Yeah.
Right. Now, Kevin Lamb told us, when he gave evidence last week, that the reason why TP10 was specified for the P2 panel at Grenfell Tower was because panel systems didn't manufacture their styrofoam panels in the correct colour. Was that your understanding?
That's not something I've heard before.
Right. No. But just for the reference, that's day 38, page 176, line 22. You say that's something you hadn't heard before. Do we take it from that you didn't have a conversation with Kevin Lamb about using Kingspan TP10 as the inner core?
Yeah, I don't recall these conversations.
If we go to HAR 402477, we can see that you placed an order with Panel Systems on the 11th of September 2015. This is an email from you on that day to Panel Systems. And it's addressed to someone called Neil. Please see purchase order attached to replace the one placed under Harley Curtain Wall Limited, now in administration. And the purchase order itself is at HAR 50445. Do you recognise that document?
Yeah, I recognise it as
As
one of the purchase orders, yeah.
Yes. So it was you who placed the order with Panel Systems, and then I think you wrote to them with an amended order after Harley Curtain Wall had gone into administration.
Okay, yes.
Now let's look at page 6 of that document. We can see that you attach a schedule, and it's panel schedule 3 curtain wall, and we've got panel spec P2, P3, P4 and P5. You see that?
Yes.
And they are all, as you can see there, formed with aluminium skin on the outside, external and internal, and a 25mm king span TP10 in P2, P3 and P4, and in P5 a combination of WP ply and king span TP10. Do you know where that schedule came from? Who compiled it?
That'd be me.
You compiled that, did you?
Yes.
Right. It is what we see set out on that schedule what actually got delivered to site.
I don't know from seeing those kind of panels. I don't know if there's a way of identifying that.
Now, the inquiry's experts found from their site inspections after the fire that the panels used at P2 did not have, so far as they could see, a Kingspan TP10 core, but rather a styrofoam core. If they're correct about that, can you explain that?
As you can see from that, I ordered TP10, as I'm sure it says on the specification notes, so I can't answer why.
Well, let me show you a little bit more specifically. Can we please have up BLAS 608? And I'd like to go to page 62, please. On page 62 and over onto 63, we can see at the bottom of 62, paragraph 8.10.41, and there's the diagram, the window insert P2, and Dr. Lane says the core material of the specification is not consistent with my observations from site, as shown in figure 8.73. Although the drawings and specification, if we can go over the page, indicate the material specified as Kingspan TP10 PIR, the foam insulation observed on site was light blue, which is consistent with the styrofoam extruded polystyrene material as specified for the main infill panels, Aluglaze. And then if we go a little bit further down page 63, we'll look at figure 8.73, please. You can see that's it, 8.73, you can see the 25mm layer of styrofoam in the light blue core of the panel there, and the description under the figure: window insert insulating core panel removed from glazing system, flat 10 kitchen. However, this window insert was present for every flat as per the Harley specification. Can you account for how it comes about that the P2 panel contained a 25mm layer of styrofoam as opposed to the TP10 Kingspan as stipulated or specified?
I don't remember having conversations with Panel Systems about them changing it. So beyond that, I would be guessing that they have changed it themselves.
When it arrived on site, did nobody check to make sure that what you had ordered was consistent with what was being delivered?
So I think with the panels, with the delivery note we looked at earlier on, they were going to CEP, so they were glazed into the majority of the window frames already that were fitted to the bulk of the tower. There were some smaller ones ordered, I think, later on in the job that were delivered like that to site. In terms of why that was not identified, I don't know. I've also never seen Kingspan TP10, so I don't know if I'd known what colour it was.
Did you ever do the exercise of comparing what was delivered on site by way of the P2 panels with what was specified in the purchase order we've seen?
I'm thinking about how you'd do that. I didn't check, but I don't know how you would check.
So you don't know how, you wouldn't know how to go about a check of a product between what's delivered and what's specified?
Visually inspecting it, in terms of the colour of the insulation, I think would be a giveaway to someone who knew what colour styrofoam was versus TP10. Is what I'm saying, and I didn't know the difference to look for.
Does that mean that you are entirely reliant on the manufacturer and supplier to deliver to site what was in the purchase order?
I think it's an expectation that they'd do so.
Would that be normal in your admittedly limited experience as a project manager?
Sorry, would what be normal?
Well, would be reliance on a manufacturer to deliver to site what was the subject of the order? Would it be normal to rely on a manufacturer without conducting any checks yourself?
I think broadly speaking, yes. I mean, to my, as you said, limited experience with styrofoam panels, I couldn't see a way to check the difference. I don't.
So does that explain why you didn't make a check? You couldn't see a way to do it?
I also wasn't looking out for to be deceived.
Mr. Millett, is it part of your point that it could have been checked? Because I think the witness said earlier, once these panels are glazed into the window assembly, you can't very easily see what the core is.
I think my point's really more addressed, Mr. Chairman, to the ones that arrive later separately. So let's just focus on that. But before I get there, in relation to the ones that are glazed into the window panel,
Yes.
they are what you see from the purchase orders isn't a set of windows which includes composite elements, including the P1 or P2 panel. You're actually ordering the P2 panels as a separate product, and we've seen that from the purchase orders. So I'm just trying to get to the bottom of how it comes about that since you're ordering them as a separate panel, and indeed they're specified on the Harley spec as a separate product,
Yes.
how come they're delivered in a way that means you can't check what it is you've ordered?
Well, as I understand it, the P1 and the P2 panels were installed into the frames in St Helens at the CEP factory. That's where they were delivered to. And the order you showed me that I placed just now was for the curtain wall system on the lower floor. So with your reference to P1 and P2 panels,
You also said that there were some smaller ones ordered later on in the job, delivered to
yes.
site. Was there a way that you could check those, which weren't glazed into the window system, and look at the edges and compare the colour and feel of the material with TP10, the subject of the specification?
I think yes. I think you, as long as the edges aren't taped, and I don't remember if they were taped or not, you could physically, as you said, feel the texture and the colour. But as I said, tried to make the point earlier on that rely on knowing the difference between the two products, and I didn't know the difference between the visual difference between the two products.
Right. Can I ask you to turn to the witness statement of a Mr. Michael Roach? He's Panel Systems, and this is PAN 5029. I'm sorry, 6029. PAN 6029. And he's asked a question at question 12. This is on page 3. And he says, the only conversation I had, I should tell you what the question is. The question is, did you discuss the suitability of an insulated panel with a core material of Kingspan TP10 with any of your colleagues at PSL? If not, why not? If so, please provide details of those discussions. And his answer is, the only conversation I had was to advise that TP10 is not suitable as a core in a composite panel due to the manufacturing tolerance and uneven surface of the TP10. I recall discussing an alternative PIR insulation that was more suitable as a panel core. So to your knowledge, was TP10 ever actually supplied at all as the core of panels by Panel System, or do they all have a styrofoam core?
I think from what we've seen, I think the reality is that they were supplied as a styrofoam core, as Dr. Lane has suggested.
Yes, and he says, the only conversation I had, was that conversation with you, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
You don't recall a conversation with Michael Roach of Panel Systems?
No.
Were you ever told that TP10 was not going to be used, despite it being what was specified on the Harley specification?
Not that I recall.
Did you ever communicate the change in product to anyone else within Harley?
Not that I recall.
What about Ryden?
Not that I recall.
What about Studio E, so far as you had contact with them?
Not that I recall.
Is there a reason why that change was never communicated, even to anyone else in Harley, or let alone Ryden or Studio E?
Has it changed on the drawing or change?
Change in what was put on the building from what was ordered?
I don't know.
Do I take it that you never sought or looked at the BBA certificate for these panels, or even whether there was one?
I don't know if there was one.
No. Do you accept that you ought to have investigated whether this was an appropriate product? The P2 panels as delivered, for use on Grenfell Tower as a building over 18 metres in height?
I mean, at the time the first panels were ordered, I didn't order them. It didn't occur to me at that time, and with the subsequent order that I've had placed for the curtain wall and the lower floor windows, again, it's not a thought that came to my mind.
Do you accept that somebody at Harley should have checked whether or not the panels were suitable for use on a building over 18 metres in height?
On my current understanding of ADB, I'd probably say no on the basis that the windows are excluded from the external wall, and that in the configuration that we had, where it's a fully bonded thermoplastic core, you take the surface, or you can take the surface properties of the product as the performance of the product. That's my understanding now. So to answer your point, for use above 18 metres, on that take on it, no.
Right. Did you ever look at the BBA certificate for TP10?
I did not.
You didn't. Did you know that it was a warm roof insulation product?
I did not.
Can I ask you to look at HAR 3020436, please? This is an email from you to Panel Systems, 2nd of September 2015. You say, "Hi Mike, as discussed on the phone, I'm looking into ways of mounting an anti-arson letterbox on a glazed-in panel in a curtain wall screen. As the letterbox is fireproof, do you offer a non-combustible (brackets class 0) (brackets composite panel in a 28mm thickness painted on both sides in a standard RAL colour that I could fix the letterbox to?" Now, first of all, do you have any recollection of the telephone conversation which you're referring to here?
Not the telephone call, no.
Now, I mean, was this in the context of the Grenfell Tower project at that time, or possibly another project? Early September 2015.
No, this was Grenfell Tower, yes.
It was Grenfell Tower. Now, you say, do you offer a non-combustible (brackets class 0) (brackets composite panel? Would it be fair to say, looking at that at the time, that you thought class 0 meant that a product was non-combustible?
Yeah, as I said earlier on about my misconception of class O and limited combustibility, yes.
Right, so you accept that was a misconception. Because Is that because you now know that class 0 and non-combustible are not equivalent terms?
Yes.
Yes. Can you now be shown HAR 402853? This is a quotation from Panel Systems for a class 0 composite panel sent to you, dated the 4th of September 2015. You can see the date in the top right-hand corner, Mr. Bailey. And you see in big letters underneath your address, class 0 composite panel. And there is a quotation which follows below that, external face, and then core material, 2 times 12mm versifier, and then the internal face, external and internal faces being aluminium in both cases. Now, versifier, did you know versifier is an A1 rated non-combustible board? Did you know that?
Yeah, I know it as a cement sheathing board.
You know it as a... Did you know that at the time, that it was a cement sheathing board?
That was my understanding, yes.
Right. So does that tell us that you were aware that Panel Systems could provide a fire-resistant panel using a versifier core?
I'm getting this is prompted a memory now. And I know I said I didn't remember a phone call with Michael, but it's prompting memory now that when there was some discussion about it being not something that was usually asked for, and it was I don't know if it's a head scratcher for them. Now you showed me this, I remember getting this the fact that they've referred to it as a Class A composite panel, not an A1 composite panel, I think suggests this is a sort of a custom solution.
And as a custom solution, was there any discussion within Harley about whether this solution should be used instead of the P1 or P2 panels?
No, because this was an inquiry we made specifically because of the anti-arson letterbox. When we were asked a price for that, I was told by, I think, Claire Williams from the council that it is a risk that they consider with letterboxes on their properties, that they are subject to arson attacks, and we were specifically asked to provide something like that. And I think we took a step further forward in terms of the provision for the letterbox. I think what followed on from this was the discussion from where I now know about the thinking behind the insulated sandwich panels when they're glazed into a system and taking the service rating of those products.
Did this quotation, Class 0 composite panel, not cause you to reconsider whether the window infill panels with their styrofoam or TP10 cores were appropriate or should be replaced with this kind of composite panel?
Not at all.
Why is that?
It didn't ring any alarm bells.
Right, you didn't put two and two together and think, gosh, actually, perhaps we should be using that instead of these infill panels.
No, and I wasn't aware there was a problem with the other panels on it.
Do you now accept that this is something you should have reconsidered, having been alerted to the existence of this custom product by panel systems?
I mean, in hindsight, possibly.
Mr. Chairman, it's 4:30.
Yes.
And I've come to the end of a number of subtopics and a big topic, and about to start a different topic altogether.
Probably be better to start that
I think
tomorrow.
it would. We have lost a little bit of time because of the technical difficulties and Mr. Renters' problems this morning, but I hope we can make those up during the course of the day, but if not, we will revisit it tomorrow, if I may.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Well, we'll stop there for the day, Mr. Bailey. Going to have to ask you to come back to answer some more questions tomorrow, please.
Of course.
And we'll resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And please bear in mind, the temptation may be very strong when you're going home because you'll see your father and others, but please don't talk about your evidence or anything to do with the subject matter of it over the break, all right?
Of course.
Thank you very much.
See you
So
tomorrow.
if you go with the usher now, we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. 10 o'clock tomorrow, please. Thank you.